Welcome back to another video. My name is Tyler, and in this video, we're going to work through pwnlabs.io. Now, if you've never heard of pwnlabs.io, it's an incredible platform where you can learn all about Azure, AWS, and GCP pen testing. If you think about Hack the Box or Try Hack Me, it's sort of like that, but all focused on the cloud. All focused on the cloud and kind of bite-sized chunks, sort of like the VMs you discover on those other platforms. In today's stream, or really video if you're watching this after the fact, we are working through the Escalate Privileges by IAM Policy Rollback. And here's what I'm gonna do. If you're completely new to cloud stuff, I'm going to do my best to explain what we are doing every step along the way and try to teach through the material. So if you find anything confusing as I go and you're here live, please drop a comment. Let me know what you find confusing. Let me know what is unclear, and I'll do my best to dig into it a little further. And if anything, I will ask ChatGPT to explain like we are five, and we will learn about this content together. Let me share my screen. Overgrown Carrot over on Twitch said, I missed the Pwned Lab thing this morning. It was 5 a.m. my time when it started. How did it go? It went incredible. Yo, thank you those who joined the stream and even those who can watch the video afterwards. If you missed the stream, watch the video on my YouTube channel. But yo, we had, I think our stream topped out at 170 people watching live, which is absolutely insane. So seriously, all of you who joined for that live thing, that went way better than I was expecting. No technical issues at all. Everything went nice and smooth. But all right, here is what we are given. Escalate Privileges by IAM Policy Rollback. I do think this is a premium lab, so you need a premium account to work through this lab, but if you don't have one, you can live vicariously through me. We are provided with an access key ID and a secret access key. Now in AWS, this is how you authenticate, at least to the AWS command line interface, which I will show to you. Turn my music down a little bit. Actually, I don't like this music. I need to change the music. Give me just a second, y'all. I need music that like sounds good but isn't distracting to me. You know what I mean? Here, I like this playlist. Let this one get started. Here we go. Anyways, that is what this access key ID and secret access key. So you can kind of think of this as a username and a password, and I'll show you how to access that with the AWS CLI, but let's read through what we are working on. The other thing that Pwned Labs recently added, I think within the past 2 weeks, is on every lab they let you know, hey, is this suitable for a CTF approach? In other words, can you kind of approach this from a black box perspective, or is it more of a guided room? And this one is suitable for a CTF approach. So here is our scenario. During a routine review for huge logistics, your team stumbled upon a file named passwords. An Excel file. Using the AWS credits found in the file, can you navigate and possibly access sensitive data and resources within huge logistics cloud environment? Remember, it's not just about finding vulns, it's about understanding the potential consequences and protecting the client. Time to dig deeper. So here's a scenario. Inside of this file is where these creds were located. All right. Let's go ahead and look at the real world context. Oh, actually, no. That part might give too much away. We'll just start with the scenario. Let me get Cherry Tree pulled up. What up, Leon? What up, cat? Did you guys hear my cat meow at me? You want up here? You want to be on stream, kitty? Here, you can come tell everybody hi. Oh, no? Okay, he just ran away from me. Apparently, he just wanted to meow at me. That works, too. We'll just call this IAM Policy Rollback. And we'll go ahead and record some of this for our notes. We'll record our scenario. Zoom in a little bit. Make this H1 and make it a little bit bigger. And we'll do credentials. Access key ID. Secret. There we go. And we know it's called IAM Policy Rollback, so we're going to be looking at AWS policies assigned to our account, I am guessing. And what policies are, they kind of tell you, hey, here are the privileges you have in this environment. So if you think about Active Directory. In Active Directory, you have different groups, different permissions you have. That's kind of what policies are like in AWS. Policies say, hey, here is what you can and cannot do in this AWS environment. So one goal of AWS pen testing is, can you elevate your privileges? Can you take over other policies? Can you take over an account with more permissive policies on the AWS infrastructure that you are pen testing? So that's what we're going to attempt to do. And with the policy rollback, the name is pretty descriptive of what we are going to attempt to do. So here's our scenario, here's our credentials. The first thing we need to do is authenticate to the AWS environment. And I know I'm missing some stuff in the chat. Let me check out chat. Martin said, joined late during the live stream with Ian earlier this afternoon. There was a free premium for Pwned Labs. There was, we did a giveaway for one person who joined during the live stream, and that was actually my friend Oreo Bite. He won that year-long premium subscription to Pwned Labs. Hopefully we'll be able to do more giveaways in the near future. What up, Christopher Young? Good to have you here. What up, Kevin? What up, Leon? Time to get Paku set up. I don't think we'll even need Paku for this. We'll do it the manual way. All right, let's get authenticated. So I'll pull up our terminal here. And so to authenticate, we can do, I think it's AWS configure. It's going to ask for an access key. So let's go ahead and grab our access key. Copy that. It's going to ask for our secret. That's fine. That's fine. So the first thing we want to do is kind of like the who am I equivalent in AWS. Who are we? What's our username? And to do that, we can do AWS STS get caller identity. That is the who am I command in AWS. At least I think it is. I'm going off of my own memory, which I always forget these commands because they're so verbose. They're not easy to remember. But there we go. It actually did work. So that is our who am I. Let me go and take a screenshot of that. And we will drop that in our notes. All right, that's who we are. Who am I? And so let's go ahead. If you're like me and you don't remember the syntax for any of this stuff, let me just stop sharing my screen for a moment. Let me authenticate to good old ChatGPT. All right. So here is how I do AWS stuff and Azure stuff because I can never remember the syntax. Give me some of the AWS CLI commands for enumerating policies attached to my account. I'm already authenticated. Like I said before, policies kind of say what permissions we have in it. So here's the first thing we want to do. Like ChatGPT comes in glitch, but once again, I always forget the syntax of this stuff. To list all policies attached to a specific IAM user, the IAM user is just kind of our user account. So our IAM user is this one right here, our intern01. We can do AWS IAM list attached user policies, username, and then pass it our username. So let's go ahead and give that a shot and see if it works. Intern01. Okay, so what we can see is attached to our user, intern01, we have one attached policy called the intern policy. So I'm going to take a screenshot of that and drop it in our notes. All right, attached policies. And now what we want to do is enumerate, hey, what does this policy actually allow us to do? And we'll see if ChatGPT has that information for us. We don't need group policies. We don't need to list all policies attached to specific IAM role. We don't really need that. Oops, can I view detailed information on a specific? You should apt install TLDR, as that has a lot of examples for AWS, GCP, Azure. What is that? Let's check it out. TLDR. Oh, too long, didn't read. That's cool. It says community-driven man pages. TLDR list fuzz preview. Nifos, how do you look up specific like AWS stuff? Is it better than ChatGPT? Here's what we're trying to do. So if we want to get our policy metadata, jeez, we'll do this and we'll pass it our policy ARN right here. Okay, so looking at this, we have some policy information here about our intern policy. We have the policy name, the policy ID, the ARN, which is like the unique resource identifier of it, the default version ID. Now this should stand out to us because it's V2, right? If you see a version 2, it means there's probably a version 1 as well, right? And initial IAM policy. And knowing that this is called IAM Policy Rollback, one might think, hey, maybe we can roll back our policy, but we want to see what are some of the specifics about this policy. But first, let's go ahead and continue with our notes by grabbing a screenshot of it. Let's drop that in there. Now, let's do this command. Very similar. Sorry, we need the version ID, and our version ID is version 2. And we need the policy ARN, which we already have from back here, that unique identifier, which is right here. So let's grab the policy ARN, and then we should be able to see specifics. Here we go. So this is what this intern policy allows us to do. So what does it allow us to do? Well, we can describe instances. So AWS has this thing where they like to use names that are confusing, that don't make much sense, right? An EC2, if you're new to AWS, is just a virtual machine, but they decide to call it an EC2 because they think they're cute. All right, EC2, when you see that, just think virtual machine. IAM is kind of like permissions, the user accounts. So what IAM permissions do we have? Well, we can get policy versions. We can get policy, which we've already kind of done that. We can list policy versions. We can get our user policy, so all policy information. We can list attached user policies, which we've already done. And here's what stands out. We can set our default policy version. What that means is right now our policy version is V2, but if policy V1 gives us more permissions, we can actually set our own policy so it's version ID V1, and we might be able to use that for privilege escalation. Let's go ahead and grab this once again for our notes, because we always want to be in the habit of taking good notes on this. We'll highlight this, and I want to go ahead and do this right here. That is key, that we have that permission. That should stand out to us, right? Now, let's see. Remember, we have V2, and I said, hey, if there's a V2, there's probably a V1. Let's see what V1 permissions give us. So there is a V1. We can see that based on the response. If we do something like V3, we know, hey, no policy version. So the fact that it responds, we know there is a V1. And so what does this allow us to do? We can describe instances, which we could do that in the previous one as well. So that's not really anything new. But look at this one. It has a bunch of things to do with S3 buckets. Specifically, we can list all buckets, we can get objects, which means we can download objects, and we can list buckets. And you can see it has the effect allow, and the resource is the wildcard, so we have full access to every S3 bucket in the environment. Now, if you're new to AWS, you might think, what the heck is an S3 bucket? Well, an S3 bucket is a way to store, I think the correct terminology is unstructured data. S3 buckets can be used to store static websites, can be used to store just data in an environment. I like to think of it almost like FTP for the cloud, and a file transfer protocol for the cloud in S3 bucket. And one of the things you check with an S3 bucket is kind of like FTP. Do you have anonymous read and write access to it? If you do, that's often a way that you can really get into an environment. But here we go. We didn't have permission before, but now we have permission to this. So sort of like FTP, if we can set our default policy to be version 1, then we begin to enumerate what is there in the S3 buckets. Is there anything sensitive in the S3 buckets? So let's ask ChatGPT, how do I set this I think it's like set default policy. Oh yeah, I'm right. Set default policy version. So we're using AWS IAM set default policy version. We passed it the policy ARN and we passed it the version ID of version 1. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, we didn't get an error message, so that's good. Now I'm going off memory, but I think to list S3 buckets is AWS S3 LS for list and S3 again. I think that's correct. Okay, no. So not S3 again. So AWS S3 LS, we have a bucket right here called huge logistics data, right? So that might stand out to us. That seems interesting. Let's go and grab a screenshot of that. Control C, pull up our notes here. We changed our default policy to version 1, which allows us to list and get from S3 buckets. Right, there's the S3 bucket, huge logistics data. So if you want to list what's in there, it's AWS S3 LS S3 again. Like I said, it's confusing using AWS. And then we copy this and paste that in. There we go. So on here, we can see there's a file, amexexport.zip. So now we want to copy that. Do I have a directory for Pwned Labs? Cool, LS. All right, we'll make a directory and we'll call it we'll call it Policy Rollback. All right, now let's do a similar command as this. I want to save it to our present environment. We'll change it to CP for copy. And let's see if we can download what it looks like American Express credit card information, amexexport.zip. All right. We'll unzip Amex export, and we need a password. We can try password. Nope, okay, that's incorrect. So with a .zip file, I think zip to John would work for this. So zip to John, PK zip encrypted files only. I'm guessing that's what this is. Use only this file from the zip file. Okay. Zip to John, Amex. I don't know if this will work. Hey, okay, cool. We have the hash here. Now if we do John, amex.hash, word list, user share. Oh wow, I haven't even unzipped rocky.txt. All right, tar, or it's gunzip. All right, let's see if that worked. Now we will try John, Amex hash, word list equals user share word list rock.u.txt. All right, fingers crossed that this works. Boom, and it worked right away. So we actually have the password right there. Let's grab a screenshot of that. Copy. Notes. And now unzip Amex export, and we'll use this as our password, one logistics. And we have our flag. Boom. And we will drop our flag in here, as well as put it into Pwned Labs and get credit for that. Now let's consider, like, what would we do if we were a pen tester and wanted to recommend a fix on here? All right. Well, the first thing is, this is our initial attack entry. You should not be storing things like access keys and secrets in a file called passwords. Now, you would be surprised how often on internal pen tests that this actually happens, where clients or organizations are storing password information in a file called passwords in clear text. So this is actually really real world when you discover something like that. So first of all, that's the first thing. Hey, you don't want to do that. But even if we do like an assume breach scenario, let's say we have this assume breach scenario as internal one, what can we do from there? Well, we can see that our user is overly privileged. So even if you are studying something like the Security Plus, kind of new to the field, going through the Security Plus, one of the first things you learn about is the principle of least privilege. User accounts and IAM roles in AWS should only have the least amount of privileges required for their specific role. There's no reason an intern needs to have permissions to set their default policy version, or really even to probably list and get user policies. They don't need those permissions. If they don't need those permissions, don't give them to them, because if our user did not have the ability to set their default policy version, even if they could list policy versions, if they couldn't set a default policy version, they could not have done this Privest by rollback. But because we had that policy set, we were able to see, okay, we have V2, V1 gives us access to the S3 buckets. We went ahead and set it, and then we were able to list all the data. And then finally, the other thing that we would want the organization to know about is this looks like it's supposed to be like American Express credit card data. That's a big no-no. PCI, which is, what's PCI stand for? The Security Standards Council. I'm quite certain they have policies. We'll do PCI. PCI credit card. I don't know if this is going to work. Essentially, if I could figure out where they talk about it, to be PCI compliant, you need to not be storing credit card data in clear text. That's one of the things you need to comply with. Jeez, I can't even find their audit information though. Or this has ChatGPT. Does storing credit card numbers in clear text a violation of PCI standards for compliance? Yeah, so it is a violation of the payment card industry data security standard. According to their requirement 3, which focuses on protecting stored cardholder data, it is mandatory to protect stored cardholder data by rendering PAN, or primary account number, at a minimum, unreadable anywhere it is stored. This includes digital media, backup media, and in logs, which this organization is not doing that if they're storing all of this in clear text. And really just storing any sensitive information in clear text is a bad idea, including credentials, personally identifiable information. So those are all things we want the client to be aware of. And let's go ahead and look at this. Let's see what the official walkthrough is like. So here's our real world context. IAM set default policy version is a potentially dangerous permission that AWS cautions about using. Let's check out this blog. Oh, mitigate privilege escalation. So it talks about it there. A threat actor possessing this permission could potentially increase their access level by leveraging unused versions of existing policies. A threat actor with this permission would be able to switch a default policy to any other versions to potentially escalate their privileges, which is exactly what we did. This is a simple example of direct self-escalation, with the identity being able to modify its own rights depending on the permissions contained within other policy versions. So here's the walkthrough. Same thing I did. Yep, same thing I did right there. Although I didn't list it this way. This would have been a very clear way to see that there was two policies if you list policy version. I just noticed in my current policy it was called V2, so I just kind of assumed, hey, there's probably a V1 as well. And we kind of walked through that. We saw the S3 stuff. Yep, that's what we did. Oh, this is downloading. If you have Kali, zip to John is already installed and in your path. And rocku.txt, I should have explained this when we were going through it. Those of you who might be new might be thinking, how do you know which word list to use? It's kind of like a meta, if I'm using that in the right way. When you're doing a CTF on Try Hack Me or Hack the Box or Pwned Labs, rocku.txt is like the standard for it. Now, in the real world, you're not using rocku.txt. So if I discover hashes in a real pen test, I'm actually using a cloud hash cracker with a bunch of different lists and a bunch of different ways that it's mutilating those lists to make other combinations of words. That's how you do it in the real world. But at least for pen tests, it will teach you the standard process by just using something like rocku.txt, which I think it goes back to a music service back in the day, right? A social app. It originated from that in 2009. Rocku, a social app and advertising network, suffered a devastating cyber attack that led to the exposure of over 32 million user passwords. Running John, we cracked the hash instantly, reveal the password logics 1. Right at mistake, wasn't the password 1 logistics? I'm not sure, you might be right actually. Oh yeah, 1 logistics. I'll ping Ian about that. And there we go. Okay, so defense. In both on-prem and cloud infrastructure, there can exist shadow IT accounts with shadow permissions. Accounts and principals that may escape the watchful eye of IT and security teams. In this instance, the intern account was assigned the potentially dangerous permission IAM set default policy version that allowed us to gain access to an S3 bucket. Against best practices, this S3 bucket contained an export of American Express credit card numbers contained within a password protected zip file. However, the password is found to be very weak and we gain access to personally identifiable information. Let's check out this HackerOne report. I like that. The cool thing about Pwned Labs is I notice in the further reading on a lot of the labs, they include a HackerOne report showing, hey, this really happened in the real world. So look, information disclosure via zip file. Hello, Acronis team. I hope you're doing well. During my recon, I found an open S3 bucket, and this bucket has a zip file. And this file contains sensitive information about the internal systems of Acronis, however you say it. The zip file is from 2018, and it looks like it was in the dev environment, but some employees updated this backup to open S3 bucket. An attacker could download this file and read it. Sysinfo. So, like real stuff that you can discover. How much do they get paid for this? Apart from bucket name, blah, blah. Oh, it was a duplicate? That's the thing that's annoying about bug reports. This should be, I mean, I don't know what was in this file. What was in it? We have leak admin jot token. Was the jot token expired though? Anyways, awesome find, I think. For those of you who are watching this video on YouTube, this is the end of this video. So hey, hope you enjoyed working through this Escalate Privileges by IAM Policy Rollback Lab with me, and I will catch you in the next one.